Jason, you were in New Jersey hanging
Mm-hmm.
out at the NBA broadcaster meetings. Quick trip for you. Flew out, flew right back. Couple days there. First off, if you would, as I will sort of semi-interview you here, what is the purpose of these? Give us the log line here for what these broadcaster meetings are every year and what they're generally trying to accomplish.
I think it's anything that's, well, one is to bring everybody together. That's always kind of a fun thing to see. A lot of people from around the league and producers and directors and on-air people, radio, TV. PR has been there the last couple of years. They've and they do their own separate meetings, and sometimes we're together. And a bunch of the league officials. So you get literally word from the commissioner. You get word from other league dignitaries, I guess. One of the highlights usually is the referee clinic, because there's usually some new rules or some points of emphasis. Go over some calls that have been made in the past and kind of how they're looking at it and the breakdown of that. And really a lot of it is to try to educate everybody as best they can, because they're pretty transparent there. Especially like when you're talking about the officiating part, Dave, like look, they're very well aware that their officials will miss calls. They're very they're critiqued on every call. They get graded on everything. So they gave us really interesting information on what like they have to go through. And their point is, look, the storytellers are the broadcasters and the producers and directors of how that is being configured. And they said, look, if we're in the wrong place, if we're executed a rule wrong, if we've made a wrong call, they're okay with that being called out. They just want to make sure people know the rules and know that the broadcasters and the directors and producers are as educated as possible. So that way, at least if it's, hey, this was done in the wrong way, that's where the error was made, not in the information that was given out, like clear path or whatever, some specific rule that maybe sometimes is not correctly stated on the air. They're going, well, look, you're not even giving the correct information out. And so now the audience is taking that in.
Right.
And so that kind of stuff. But a lot of it's just, to get everybody together and talk about a few league things. And it's a good time. It just goes pretty quickly though.
I have to ask, is food provided?
Yes. Yeah.
Good
so
food?
It's it's general. It's in a hotel. There's a couple different ballrooms. So like outside the rooms, like before there's breakfast and then there's a lunch. And the first night that's the fun night too. It's a dinner that's at a restaurant it's a really short walk from the hotel. And you got a view out towards New York out on the water. And that's just a good gathering, catch up time. And then, by midday yesterday, I flew in Monday. The meetings were most of the day Tuesday, half a day yesterday, and flew home.
What was if any, I know I'm putting you on the spot, but what was your biggest takeaway, or what was the biggest point of emphasis? What was the one thing you bring back where you go, oh, okay.
I will say that, because I think we already had kind of an enlightening, when you asked me about, or I told you that there was really no public discussion of the Clippers situation, which I've already seen a lot of feedback. How could nobody ask about that? And it's actually a fair question to be asked, but like I tried to point out, it's a different gathering of media than the writers, reporters, the people breaking story. That's not the group that's there. Doesn't mean they can't. But
your group is more presenting, correct?
Yeah, it's exactly. It's definitely more of, hey, listen to us. Not you can't ask questions, but this is what we're. There's slides and speakers and different things like that. But I would say
like a workshop, basically.
Yeah. And there's some breakouts where like we had a radio, just like the radio broadcast group that had a breakout. The TV, there's just different things that you have breakouts with. But my biggest takeaway, I would say, well, there's a couple things. One, I thought the most impactful thing I heard was Coach K was a guest speaker.
Oh, wow.
And he was phenomenal. I was sitting with Deuce and Morgan at the time, and Deuce like, I just committed to Duke. It was really funny,
right.
Just because he he told some amazing stories. He's one of the ambassadors for the NBA now in his retirement, and he just loves basketball. And he told just amazing stories how much he loves the game and how much he thinks it's important for broadcasting and television and radio to, really tell those stories to get others to. I mean, a lot of people love the game. I mean, that's hopefully why people are consuming and watching and listening. So he was great. He was phenomenal. But I think the biggest takeaway I had, Dave, would be the transition that the NBA is going through, and not on the floor per se, but it's how the product's going to be consumed. And it's going to be different in the fact that there's now Amazon, there's Peacock, it's moved to NBC, there's still ABC, ESPN, there's still regional sports networks, there's still radio. So it's everywhere, but I think there will be an adjustment. Look, I mean, for years it was on NBC, like, the theme song, and they played that. That's all back. But then it went to ABC, ESPN, and TNT, and that's different. And you get used to things. And so their data shows that a ton of people have switched to streaming, which I 100% agree with. I think this is my own belief, and I don't know. I don't even say belief. I'm just curious what you think too. It has shifted, there's no doubt, but does everybody, and I know the answer is no, but do the masses all have Amazon? Do the Prime? Do the masses all have Peacock? Do the masses? So at some point, I don't know that it's going to hurt the product, but maybe everybody gets that, or is still over-the-air television going to work? Or at some point in this 11-year deal, like people have suggested, I think Kelly Brothers has famously told us this. It's like, hey, maybe they could put this all in one spot. Well, they did. They had it. It was called cable.
Right.
So does that shift in this time, or has it become even more dramatic where it's all singularly streaming and people? I don't know the answer to that, but I can tell the league is very excited about their new partners. Each of the new partners is going to do something a little bit differently that I think we're going to witness and see in their own presentations. But I'm curious on the numbers, and I know the league is very adaptable. And so, like, for example, they're going to try the coast to coast Tuesday primetime on Peacock and NBC. So, for example, I think, Dave, the Kings have 5, if I remember right, 8 o'clock starts.
Blech.
Right. I don't love, and now there's several reasons for having a morning show, but I just even wonder in Sacramento in general, I think they moved to 7. That's a pretty good sweet spot. Maybe some would even argue for, hey, can we move it to 6? But whatever, 7. Now that game goes to what, 9:30 or 10? I don't think it's too late, but for some it might be. Now you're starting at 8. If that gets to 10, 10:30, 11, overtime. I mean, and they'll do all the metrics and they'll see, like, does this help? And I think of the fans of the game in New York that are going, that game's tipping off at 11 our time. What are we doing? So I'm curious about the way they're trying to please their different partners and their partners' different ideas. They'll know in a year or two if it works, but that's something I'm going to be curious about.
We had a long talk about this kind of this topic yesterday because Netflix is getting involved in baseball next year. And we talked about how the biggest problem with that, and you and I've spoken about this before, is that it doesn't allow you to flip around. You have to go to Amazon. You have to go to Netflix. And so without it being fully thought out, I was like, I wonder if there's a way that Amazon and Netflix could co-opt a channel of their own, because you can have unlimited channels on a Comcast or a DirecTV and a YouTube TV, etc., to where you have the option obviously to watch it on their network, but also you can watch Amazon Sports, or think about it like the NBC Sports California channels that are active when they're broadcasting, but not. And the more I've thought about it, because the big response there was, well, they want you to stay on their channel. Well, sure. I started thinking about it. I'm like, well, hold on though. But you could, let's take Amazon Prime, for example, Prime TV, right? Prime Video. You could subscribe to that through Amazon traditionally, which I do. I get the Amazon Prime package for free shipping. And then I also that like is also part of the Amazon Video as part of that deal, right? But you could also, just like HBO, I would think, subscribe through, let's say, YouTube TV to the Amazon channel. That gets you the same access. It's the same price. I mean, the money's all going into the same spot.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't know that, I don't even know if they're making the argument, like, for example, Netflix to advertisers saying, or Amazon to advertisers saying, well, the advantage with us is that nobody's going to flip around. They have to watch your commercials. I get that. But in the long run, I think if they were actually connected to traditional cable and streaming networks like that, they're going to get even more eyes and more views. And then guys like you and me, for example, we can take Thursday Night Football and we can do multi-view maybe, and we can split screen it with other things. We don't have to bring up a second screen. It's very interesting to see, as you just noted, where the world of broadcasting is going, because we are in a renaissance right now.
Yeah, and that's what they said. Like, look, I mean, it's been quote unquote stagnant for probably 25 years, not in a bad place, but it's been kind of the same type of thing for that amount of time. So they feel like this is the next generation, and it very well may be. I'm just curious to see how that all goes. The other thing I thought that was an interesting takeaway was there's a general feel about, like, I think you and I have been talking about this for probably a couple of years, like expansions in the bag. It's happening. It's happening. Yeah. The one thing that got brought up a couple different times in a couple different venues or couple different sessions was, I think the league was generally surprised, Dave, by the valuations of like the Celtics and the Lakers.
Yeah.
In a good way for their valuations. I mean, they were record setting, but part of the charm of an expansion to other owners is, hey, Vivek, we're going to bring in a team in Las Vegas. We're going to bring in a team in Seattle. Here's the benefits to you as an owner, because this expansion fee is going to be so exorbitant. You guys, as a Kings ownership and Miami Heat and whatever, pick your team, you're all going to get the benefit of that. Well, I think they were going to set the number at something to where these valuations are maybe even below that. So it's either the goalposts have to move on that. Maybe there's not as much of a rush of that. Also, the new TV. I don't know. It doesn't feel like it's as imminent. It doesn't mean it's off the table. It just felt like this is happening. And then now it's like, well, is it best for the league? Is it better to have 32 teams? What will it do to competition, to money shared? All those kind of things that they have to, like, I think when Adam Silver in the past, I've heard him say, look, like, we're in the process of looking into this. And it's like, I think they really are diving into like some deep numbers and financial numbers and whether owners ultimately will want it.
I will tell you, and I could be wrong here, but I will tell you, I 1,000,000,000% don't buy this. I think Adam is smart. I think the NBA is posturing. There is an incredibly logical solution to this.
Okay.
Which is, let's say the valuation, remember, a couple of years ago, we were talking about expansion. It was a $2 billion franchise fee.
Right.
Now, at minimum, it's going to be a $5 billion franchise fee.
Mm-hmm.
You set the franchise fees at $5 billion, which, by the way, is a higher valuation than about half the teams in the NBA right now. You set the franchise fee at $5 billion, and you let the new expansion teams know that they can be a part of the next TV deal, but they don't get a share of this TV deal. You're going to satiate and satisfy the current owners.
Yeah. And
the point is, are these cities and these owners, potential owners that are salivating over NBA expansion, is that going to be a deal breaker for them to get into the NBA? No, it's the price of entry. But I think Adam, what I do think is happening is, I think Adam Silver is posturing, saying, well, maybe we don't need expansion. Maybe we don't want. They do, but I think this is all business and negotiation with the owners.
A couple other things I'm thinking of that were kind of just general topics that not necessarily from Silver, or just other people that, and even Coach K may have brought this up, that I know the NBA has talked about European basketball or incorporating that, but I think there's even more talk now about something that's its own separate league, not trying to have an NBA team. But then is there
Yes.
a way to incorporate this other league, which would be equivalent maybe to like the G League, but in Europe? So it's like an own NBA run league. You could see that happening because I think there's really some interesting competition now because apparently they have a lot of European players are now just jumping into college
Yeah.
because of NIL money. And so like that's becoming a whole nother thing. It's like, wait a minute, now you've got the business of college basketball, maybe potentially hurting either European basketball and or NBA. I don't know. So it's the amount of money now that like we're talking about the top level players that are going to the top colleges that are getting money that it makes sense. Like, hey, I'm going to stay in college another year or leave Europe because now I'm going to leave Europe because I'm a professional here, but I'm going to get paid in college and I can get some good money to go to Duke and to Kansas and Kentucky. So that little wrinkle, how long is that going to last? Is the NBA, this European league, going to compete with that? It's, everybody's chasing money, but I thought that was an interesting angle of where things are going.
Funny that you mentioned that because Front Office Sports reporting yesterday, reporting an hour ago, Barcelona, Real Madrid, Fenerbahce, all currently in the Euro League are expected to join the NBA's new European League in 2028. Also, Manchester City and PSG, Paris Saint-Germain, they're both also expected to create basketball franchises. What I think is incredibly interesting about that is that the model over in Europe now, and has been for a while, is a lot of these franchises I'm mentioning, like Real Madrid, for example. You think about Real Madrid, you think about soccer. They're a soccer powerhouse, but you have the same conglomerate. It's very similar, I think, to like when the Kings then branched into the WNBA and they still own the Monarchs, but that same sport. Imagine if the Sacramento Kings were a giant powerhouse and then they decided to buy up a baseball team or an NFL football team. You have these European sporting conglomerates that are just flush with so much cash. And you're also seeing, by the way, don't be mistaken either. This is also another way for the NBA now to get involved. And I think a lot of the start of this came out of things like Live Golf. Where am I going with this? Because now all of a sudden you have this pipeline where you're able to tap into that Saudi money, which a lot of these soccer teams have now into their overall conglomerates. Now all of a sudden you're effectively bringing that Saudi money investment into Europe under the NBA umbrella, and it's just yet another way. I mean, you want to talk about a cash cow. This European thing is going to be massive for them. Plus they have they have expansion, as we just talked about here, with an influx of $10 billion sitting there on the table right now. It's a really good time to be an NBA owner.
Yeah, and I think the other thing they weren't celebrating. They've definitely highlighted it. They did this last year, and I knew they would again this year. The fact that they've had 7 different champions in 7 years, and no repeat finals appearances as far as matchups go. They like that, but they're also like, look, if we have another 4 years of Warriors we're not against that. It's just you see where it is. And I would say the other thing that I'd have to say that relates back to here, at a minimum, it's more than that, 5, maybe 7 people, like, because you have your name and your city or your team you're with and a little badge, and people are like, oh, you're gonna get Kuminga? What's going on with the Kuminga? What's the latest with Kuminga? I'm like, wow, Kuminga talk, like, and it was I don't know, palpable, whatever. People asked about it, and it was a topic out there and this wasn't in a session. It would be more like milling around and walking and talking to people and like, hey, what's the latest with that? And it's like, man. And I know you had Sam on yesterday, so I'd be curious. I did read his piece, but I thought it was interesting that, when you're Sacramento, you're not the worst team, you're not the best team, you're not really a topic of conversation out there. And we had a breakout into, there's about 8 of us in one little session of different people from around the league, different broadcasters, and kind of when you're talking about your teams. And that was a big topic about, what are the odds of getting Kuminga?
Please tell me you responded to everybody by saying, I think we will actually. And here's the detail. Like you're in the meetings.
I gave him the show YouTube page and the show info and said, out 6 to 10 every weekday mornings.
Well, we'll take a break, and thank you for the plug. That being said, probably the best part of Sam's interview was him plugging his son Landon's wrestling fundraiser at the end of the whole thing. And then
I was so upset
because Chris thought, because I turned that, Sam had texted me asking if it was okay to get a plug in. Of course it is. And then I asked him about local wrestling, and you saw Chris was like diving into TikTok or whatever as usual. And all of a sudden he perks up like a German Shepherd's ears. And then it's Sam talking about his son Landon's wrestling. The best part, though, Jason, was not the plug on the air. It was about 10 minutes later, Sam in our chat leaving all the information for everybody on how to get involved.
Well, hey, get involved, everybody.
Sam Amick here.
We'll take a break when
we should get more of our sponsors to start doing that.
Absolutely.
In the chat.
I think so. Get in there. Let's get our American